Welcome back to the Voice of the Founding Fathers, and I'm your host, Dr. D. Lee Pippin. And today, we're going to continue on a subject that was already started in some past videos. But before I get into some of the details, I want to cover some things that have been down in some of the comments. So, several people have mentioned about lawyers with the bar are not part of the government. That is actually true. And it shouldn't be true. So I do agree with the comment. Lawyers should have to meet some government criteria, not some peer criteria. And the Bar Association is an association of peers. And every state Supreme Court does off the recommendation of the Bar Association when allowing a lawyer to be licensed. So that's when they issue a statement that says, you are now allowed to practice in the state of such and such because you have met the criteria of the Florida Bar, the California Bar, etc. And every state has different regulations. Now, it is true that it would be very difficult to have a national registration for lawyers, but I also think there should be a national registration, especially when you deal in certain topics, because now we'll go into immigration. Immigration has been a topic of conversation on many things. A lawyer here in Florida can represent an immigrant in immigration court anywhere in the country, and that's under a federal jurisdiction. They can represent an immigrant anywhere in the country with the Bureau of Immigration Appeals, which is also part of the federal government, and it is both of those departments are in the Department of Justice. Once you have gone past that, if you're going to make another appeal into a regular real court situation, you have to appeal into the Court of Appeals of the federal government in whichever district was the actual court for the verdict that denied them, the original court. So, and it even becomes very confusing. There was a case that we had recently where the client was in Louisiana. The court case was in Louisiana, but the judge presiding over the case was by Zoom out of Michigan because they didn't have supposedly enough judges available. They didn't have enough things. So a lot of the immigration court, especially during COVID, was done by Zoom, and judges are everywhere in the country. You never know who's going to be a judge in a case depending on the location because it changes constantly. And in this case, we are appealing into the federal system. There was a miscarriage of justice. And that became an argument with the other part of the federal side, which was Homeland Security's attorneys for prosecuting, the principal prosecutor. Because we filed, of course, in our state, which is where our client is currently living. But in this case, there, as I mentioned, their court had originally been in Louisiana. So even though everything was finished here, they argued that it had to go back, which is where the 11th Circuit, that's the 5th Circuit, would have to go into the 5th Circuit. And in the 5th Circuit, there was even argued it could also be in the 2nd or 3rd Circuit, depending on the judge, where the judge actually was. Long story short, they went with the court side, which is the 5th Circuit, and now we're having to find a counsel to be co-counsel in that circuit because even though we have licensing in the state and we're licensed in the 11th Circuit, which covers 3 states in the federal system, we can't jump into another circuit because we're not licensed in one of the states within their circuit. And in a situation of a federal court system, if you're dealing in a federal court with the same federal laws, you should be able to get a federal license. We currently do not have one. Now, on the other side, though, a federal prosecutor or an attorney within the federal system is allowed to participate in any court in the federal system, despite where their original bar license is from. Because remember, all of them are also licensed attorneys. So they all pass a bar. So again, we have an associate. She passed the bar in Massachusetts. Under the regulations, she's allowed to practice in Massachusetts and New York as a state attorney, but she works for the U.S. Department of Labor. And in her particular case, she works out of the state of Florida right now. She can work anywhere in the country and doesn't have to join any of the local bars, does not have to be a member of the bar within the jurisdiction in which she's working. And if, while still working as a federal attorney, she decides to take a leave to handle a particular case for someone else as a friend or out of good measure or because that she feels inclined to it, she is allowed to practice in any federal court system. She can go into any federal court anywhere and does not have to be a member. So if that works for the ones working for the federal government, why don't we allow it for the other attorneys? So this basically dealt a little bit with immigration, but it's also dealt with the whole issue of lawyers and bars. Yes, the bar is not a government agency and is controlled by peers. I do agree that that is wrong. I think that there should be some type of government agency that's dealing with the licensing of attorneys and saying who is fit and who is not. Especially because in some cases with some bars in some states, it has been brought up that there has been some favoritism regarding legacy children of people that have been in the law practice or their grandparents have been in the law practice. And so basically they're walked through and given their practice to license, though they're not as competent as their father or their grandfather. And it would not have happened if it wasn't for their being a legacy child. So there are flaws. Of course, there are flaws in every system. And that is one of the reasons why I have people that work for me that are members of the bar, but I am not a member of the bar in the United States. I am a retired international justice. So, and I have my doctorate in law, along with 2 other doctorates. And I have written, actually, several treaties on the U.S. Constitution and constitutional law. So I'm very much a part of the system. I just do not believe in going into the courts, especially the way the courts are being run now. I think they're a circus. I think they're in violation of our whole foundation. And on that, the last note I will bring up is the reason why. I know it makes it very quick to bargain, but that is not what this country was set up for. So currently now, when we bring someone in, it does not matter what race, I've seen it in every race, every age, we will overcharge them deliberately, knowingly, and then use those overcharging to bully and cajole people into making plea deals. And the attorneys for the defense go along with this because people are afraid to go into court anymore. And then they terrorize their clients. And they say, Joe, if you don't take this deal, you're facing 100 years. When in reality, if he had been charged correctly, he may be facing 3 years. So even if he's innocent, he's terrified that he could spend the rest of his life in prison. So he makes a deal. He makes a deal. And this entire country has innocent people serving time or with convictions because they were terrorized into accepting it. And very few people are willing to take the chances to fight up for what's right. And it's sad that our country has come to that. But when you put so much oppression and so much fear into people's lives, they take the deal. And then they live a life of misery, even if they've been innocent. And this is an injustice. Everyone's supposed to have a day in court, yet we make sure most people never see the court, or at least not their day in court. They're there to be sentenced because they took a plea and they follow what they've been told. And that's sad. When this country was founded, it was believed it was better to have 10 guilty people go free than to have one innocent man spend a night in jail. Today, with most of the attitudes out there because of the fear that has been instilled into the American people by hype and propaganda and pundits that don't tell the real truth, we now believe it's better for 10 innocent people to go to jail than supposedly to have one guilty one get free. And I hate to tell you this, but a lot of the guilty ones still go free because they know how to work the system. They've done it long enough. They know how. It's the innocent ones that don't know how to work the system, the ones that never should be in the system, the ones that shouldn't have these issues. Remember, hit the subscribe, hit the notifications, hit the like button, and remember to have a beautiful day.